Good afternoon, everyone. So Pedro and the whole MIT team asked me to come and present the innovation that I was nominated for in the TR35 for Belgium. And the innovation that I presented there is called Data for Good. So maybe let's just start with a few minutes to explain what Data for Good is about, and then I think we'll have a discussion with Pedro. 2015 is actually a very special year because you might not remember, but early in the year 2000, like the United Nations and actually all of mankind decided to set some very ambitious Millennium Development Goals. And we're reaching the year where the deadline was set for us to reach it. And they go from poverty alleviation to combating diseases, combating hunger. And after 15 years, we've done some really tremendous progress, but there's still quite a few things that can be done. And the main improvement area that has been highlighted is the fact that we could be using more data to combat or to achieve these different goals. I created a company that's called Real Impact Analytics, and we put our expertise in analytics, the ability to collect, analyze, and act on data in order to create data for good applications. The mission is very simple. We want to help aid workers be better at what they do. If I give you a bit more context, you might say, well, why do aid workers need data? And it's actually very simple. Smart actions come from smart decisions. Smart decisions come from smart data. And when you look at the priority countries in which aid workers are active, these are countries that actually have very poor data. You might have heard about Angola. There hasn't been a population census in Angola since 1970. It's very difficult for you to do aid when you have actually no population mapping across such a large country. More recently, if you look at the Ebola outbreak that happened in West Africa, there too, there was very little data, local data that was available. Well, actually, that's not entirely true. There was one data source which was systematic, collected on the entire population every second, and it's called telecom data. And what we specialize in at Real Impact Analytics is how can you use telecom data to create greater good, social good applications. We're going to be working on a whole set of telecom data, whether it be the call detail records, who you call, who calls you, how you buy prepaid cards, signaling data, mobile banking data, and so forth. And we're going to make sure that all of this data is aggregated and anonymized so that we can extract the patterns which are relevant at the community level, at the population level, for aid workers. So it's not about breaching privacy, it's not about breaching confidentiality, it's just about how can we tap into this rich data source for the greater good. Let me give you an example, and that's the one that's presented behind me. We've been working with the Université Catholique de Louvain and with the United Nations, and they have an arm for data for good which is called Global Pulse. And we asked ourselves, is it possible to find a link between telecom data and food crises? And we found out that how you buy prepaid cards is extremely correlated with the type of food you eat. So if you top up very frequently on very small amounts, you're likely to eat certain types of food. If you top up less frequently but on high value, you have nutrient-rich food, such as carrots and mangoes. That in itself is interesting, but when you see variations in how people top up, then you can get mappings like this for food security that highlight places that should be looked at a bit more closely for food security issues. That can then trigger actions from the World Food Programme in order to say, let's go to this location because it seems that there's been a change in how farmers are topping up. That can be an indication of a crop, a bad crop, or a problem in supply, or more generally, a variation in the overall demand in the overall population. And there are all sorts of other examples, by the way. Here I'm talking about food security, but the same type of data is used for disaster relief in Nepal, in Haiti, to alleviate poverty. We've been doing research with the Gates Foundation and with the World Bank. There are so many applications, and at Real Impact, we're just one player within a very large ecosystem, and so we're trying to play our role, but there's just one relevant question which is shared amongst the entire ecosystem is, how do we scale this? Since June, jointly with Airtel, which is the second biggest telecom operator in Uganda, jointly with the United Nations, we've been launching a project to develop a first data for good platform that will be live in Uganda. Over the next 3 months, our plan is to go through and develop a catalog of use cases that we can then bring to our partners to convince them that this is the way to go. We'll need to address privacy, we'll need to address legal frameworks, how to work with others, how to co-design the apps with the end users, but clearly our ambition is to roll out what we've developed across entire continents. Currently, we're working with 4 of the 5 biggest telecom operators in Africa, and they trust us with their data every day. So what we're hoping to do here is really to change how development agencies work. Imagine if just one telco per country were to share his data with us, we would be able to predict food crises before they take place. We would be able to combat diseases like Ebola with real-time variations. It would fundamentally increase our chances to reach these Millennium Development Goals. That was for the introduction.
Thank you very much, Sebastian. I have plenty of questions. I would like to spend a few minutes talking a little bit deeper about your project, and then I would like to talk about the challenges that you're facing as an entrepreneur in Europe and ideas that maybe are applicable from your experience in Belgium to
Poland.
the life here in Poland. We don't have much time, so Severin, I'm going to ask you let us know when we're done with time, when we are about 10 minutes through, and then we can save some time for questions as well. So a lot of people are talking about big data now, and I think there are two profiles that are necessary when you're working in this sector. One of them is getting as much data as you can, and in order to do that, you need a business model for people to share the data with you. And the other side is computing that data and artificial intelligence. So on the first side, what are the business models that you're considering for the exchange of data? And on the second part, which is a little more difficult, how are you technically preparing to digest that information better than anyone else?
Super. So maybe what I'll just start by doing is that when we founded Real Impact, it was in 2009, we actually started to work with telecom operators for their commercial needs. So we were looking at, okay, how can I predict churn? How can I recommend a smarter campaign? How can I improve your operations? And that's how we actually built the trust with the telecom operators, working on that data, working on that volume, and where we basically developed our skills in terms of technology, in terms of applications, that then were migrated to the data for good space. So our initial business model was one of how can we build apps that address the commercial needs of the telecom operator, and that's where we kind of built our technology. And if you want me to give you the specifics, we're working on a big data stack. We're working with Spark. We're writing in Scala. We basically are used to working with terabytes of data. The business model for data for good needs to be different though, because you can't expect a telecom operator to say, look, I'm going to be paying for this platform so that all of the data is given to UNICEF, United Nations, the Red Cross, and so on. So you do need to find a different business model which is independent from, let's say, the telecom operator. And the direction in which we're going is to say, look, dear telecom operator, give us access to your data, not in a one-shot exercise, not as corporate social responsibility, but let's ask those different end workers to pay for the data as they would for any type of market research. If you go into the accounts of the United Nations or the World Bank, there's a line where they buy surveys. Can we tap into that budget? The telecom operator is then incentivized to share his data. A partner like us can work on all of the different transformations, and at the end of the day, it improves the decisions of the different aid agencies, and so they see the value of the money that's invested in these data for good apps. And that's how the business model can become sustainable, can go beyond, let's say, one nice publication in a journal or in an academic paper.
Okay. Just another technical question. Everybody's about to be wearing one of these, right?
Yeah.
Wearable technologies, probably more than one at once. And also governments are very prone to be producing a lot more data than they used to. And some of them are already open to opening the data to external entities, how are you planning to feeding all the information from personal devices and at the same time from governments into your system?
I think there are different data for good priorities and levels of maturity based on each geography. For example, in the geographies where I'm very active, which is Africa, for the moment the priority is mobile handset adoption, and we're beginning with smartphone adoption. Okay, so in terms of level of maturity, it's still very much driven by the phone, not yet by personalized devices. When you go to Poland, when you go to Belgium, when you go to Spain or to the US, there you have a much richer variety of devices, connected devices, cars, wearables, and so on. And all of this data can be divided into two boxes. You have actually three boxes. You can have purely open data, you can purely personal data, and purely corporate data. What I've been doing is convincing corporates to kind of transform their data so that it can be made open. What you're referring to is mostly personal data, and how can we, either through the corporation or through the individual, convince it to also become open data. And there the challenge is not so much, is it difficult to use new data sources? Is it difficult to integrate new devices? What's difficult, it's how do you get the legal framework for individuals, for corporations, for government, to make sure that this data can be used by third parties. That's really the difficult thing.
I agree that building the legal frameworks is going to be very challenging as the innovation goes faster. Another idea, we see that emerging economies or emerging markets are beginning to be faster and faster at the adoption of new technologies. What took us 10 years in Europe to develop, maybe it takes 3 years in India to take over. Do you think at some point emerging economies will be faster, will have a bigger penetration in certain technologies than developed economies?
I think clearly and that's what's amazing, is that there is innovation happening in the South, and there's innovation that's happening faster because they need to leapfrog a whole set of investments in infrastructure that they didn't have. A recent example, I'm very active in mobile banking in Africa, and everyone's saying how amazing it is because there's a very low level of financial inclusion through banks, but there's a very high level of financial inclusion through your mobile phone. And so when you were in Kenya, sending transfers through your phone is absolutely common practice in those parts of the world. It's starting to become a common practice within ours. So clearly, to leapfrog, let's say, the lack of banking industry, the infrastructure, they have been accelerating the adoption of technology. When I do my data for good apps in Africa, I actually bring it back to EU commissioners to tell them, look, this is the potential at hand. This is what we could be doing within Poland, within a whole set of different countries. And they're actually amazed because they haven't seen that type of innovation being developed or piloted here.
I think that's a great, actually a great idea, because at some point, innovation and entrepreneurship in these areas may happen even faster in developing economies. So that's a great reason for us to also be looking at different markets that would not be considered traditional for entrepreneurship and are very likely to become the main centers of innovation for certain kinds of technology, at least. I wanted to ask you a little bit more about your personal experience. How far do you want to take your company? How has the experience of becoming one of the Innovators Under 35 affected you? And what relationship do you have with the other winners in your country or other countries right now?
So on the first question, the level of ambition is, for the moment, we're at a very, very sweet spot because we're amongst the, let's say, 2 or 3 leading organizations in the development of data for good applications worldwide. And so we're working very closely with the United Nations, with the World Bank, with the Gates Foundation, with the MasterCard Foundation, and so on. And so these are all kind of the decision makers at a global scale that are going to make or break this case. And so when you are in this type of opportunity as an entrepreneur, clearly your ambition is let's make it work. Let's make it scale, and let's go as far as we can to kind of make this a global success. We're not there yet. There's still a lot of work. There's a lot of things that need to be done, but clearly we have the right momentum, we have the right thrust, and so I want to bring this project as far as it's materially possible. In regard to the link with the TR35 Belgium, clearly, and this is why I'm very happy for the Polish nominees, this type of award brings a lot of credibility. It brings a lot of awareness. At the end of the day, when you're an entrepreneur located in Brussels, when you have the stamp of the MIT Tech Review, it helps you out in terms of familiarizing colleagues, partners, whether they be in Europe, whether they be in the United States, to believe in your project and to go further. And that's why I'm very happy for all of the Polish nominees, because I'm sure it's going to be helpful for their development.
So we have a couple of minutes before we open the floor for questions. If you could talk to them, what would your advice be, and what's your vision of what's going on in Eastern Europe right now regarding innovation?
So the thing is that I'm very focused on emerging markets. So if I look at my kind of calendar, I spend roughly 2 to 3 weeks traveling across Africa and across Latin America. So I'm more familiar with what's happening in the southern hemisphere. If I look at, let's say, a lot of the people that I'm currently recruiting actually do come from Eastern Europe. And so there is amazing talent which is produced all across Europe, particularly in Eastern Europe. I think one of the key messages I wanted to share is that too often you hear that innovation can only appear in the Silicon Valley, can only appear in Boston or in Cambridge, and I think that's fundamentally flawed. Okay, there's innovation everywhere in the world, and it can appear just because people dare to innovate, dare to become entrepreneurs. This is what I'm seeing today, because all of the innovations I saw in this first batch of presentations are exceptional. There are elements that kind of make me proud to be European and to see that there are pockets of innovation everywhere. And clearly, we shouldn't feel disadvantaged wherever we come from. Let's just continue and push our innovations and turn them into a success.
That was great. I don't know if somebody from the audience wants to ask any questions. We give it a few seconds. Anyone raise their arms? If they don't, I have one. No, digging a little deeper into what you said about we don't need to be in Silicon Valley anymore. I'm Spanish. We've gone through a very tough period over the last years, and we're seeing that we're starting to grow again, actually pretty fast. What do you think? What position do you think Europe is in right now, and what do we need to do in the next years regarding innovation?
It's funny because it's clearly, opportunities are everywhere. And sometimes some countries have a downturn, but that doesn't mean that there aren't opportunities within that same country. I mean, there are certainly entrepreneurs that have been extremely successful in Spain during the downturn. We have more than doubled in size every year in a country where there's no growth. Okay, so Belgium is not kind of the leading country in terms of GDP performance. There are opportunities everywhere, and you know what? If you're not convinced of the opportunities in your country, move around. I mean, I like to use the example of a dentist who lives in Congo. He manages to, whenever you have a problem with your tooth, he's the only dentist in that location, and so he charges 200 euros per session. He's a very rich dentist, okay? And there are examples like that all around the world. So it's more a question of how do you convince yourself to go and seek these opportunities? How do you go and find them? In regard to, let's say, the outlook I have for Europe, it's, I think we're too often skeptical about our ability to achieve things, okay? I think we're too focused on the fact that, okay, maybe the growth outlook is good or not. We should focus more on what we're doing, which is great, and build on our strengths. That's something that the United States are doing very, very well. They have this ability to reinvent themselves, to always look at the bright side of things, and I think this is what we should be doing more of.
Well, thank you very much, Sebastian. I think you're going to be staying here with us, and you're going to be introducing the first one of our innovators in the second batch.
Yes.
So I'm going to leave the floor to you.
Thank you.
We're going to take the chairs away.
So it's my privilege and honor to introduce the next candidate, the next nominee for the TR35 Poland, Maciej Mahulak. He's a brilliant software engineer and scientist, and he specializes in cybersecurity. He wants to help everyone better protect their data, and in this field, he's really a key opinion leader, so I would encourage you to listen to him because he has a PhD from Newcastle University, which is a center of excellence for cybersecurity research. He launched a startup called Cloud Identity that has already been acquired by another bigger company. He's co-leading the creation of global industry standards such as UMA, the user-managed access, and he's already won several awards, namely Kantara IDDY, which I'm told is the holy grail for ID and security. So please help me welcome Maciej Mahulak.
Thank you, Sebastian, for a very kind introduction. Hi, everyone. Today, I'd like to tell you the real truth about the cloud, the truth that led to development of my own project. There is no cloud. It's just someone else's computer, and in fact, there are hundreds of millions of these computers. And these computers have the data. They have the healthcare data, they have personal data, but it's not just their data. It's basically the user's data. And on the internet, there are other users like doctors, like our colleagues, our coworkers, our friends, but there are also the bad guys. And the bad guys, they try to get access to the data without our permission. The data is really useless unless we start, just making use of it. So, we merge the data, we connect all kinds of different applications to make more use of what we already have, what we have online. However, the more we connect the applications, the harder it is to really basically see how the data is being shared. But in reality, we do not necessarily only share the data between different applications, we also share it with other individuals. And we start creating all these new connections. And the more connections we create, the harder it is really to manage them. And if we take the bad guys into the picture, the bad guys that try to get access to our data without our permission, things get really scary. So how can we address the data chaos that we have right now? The data is just distributed. It's really hard to manage that. So what we've come up with is that we've come up with a completely new way of how we look at the data that is online. It's called user-managed access. It's a very lightweight and innovative protocol that allows the data to sort of sit around the user. The user is in the center of everything. Through the protocol and the software that we've built, the user can establish direct relationships with the applications that have the data. And the protocol also allows for easy protection against the bad guys. It's really a win-win situation both for the user and the application. The user is able to have insights into how the data is shared, knows that the data is protected, and the applications no longer have to implement any security features. They delegate, with the use of our protocol, all the security to our system. But what are the numbers, you may think? Is it really the problem that we want to address? Well, let's take a look. According to a recent survey done by PricewaterhouseCoopers, the number of people that care about the privacy of their data and they value it much more than convenience is 73%. It's a really large number. But is there a market for this? Well, the estimated market is 90 billion euros annually just in Europe for the providers of such solutions as presented today. Well, okay, this might not sound that big, but hey, another estimation, 1 trillion euro. This is the estimated value of personal data just in Europe by 2020. This is way more than the entire advertising market. As an entrepreneur, this is precisely the market that I'm targeting right now. And Edison once said that a vision without execution is really hallucination. So what we've done is that we've not only built the protocol. We've not only made it a standard and advertise it to others, but we also wanted to build a company. We've done the first research at Newcastle and within UMA Work Group at Kantara. We collaborated with the Wrocław University of Technology. I gained experience from Google, eventually set up my own company called Cloud Identity, which I'm pleased to say that has just been acquired by Synergetics. And well, we still collaborate with excellent folks at Sagiton and really want to make this a reality. Give back the data to the individual. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Robert Wieliński. I am from Warsaw University Center of New Technologies. And I have a great pleasure to introduce here Tomasz Wołkowicz, who is the outstanding innovator and scientist working in molecular biology. And amongst his achievements, for example, one of them is Ebola virus diagnostics, very serious disease which requires very special treatment, and with his accomplishments he is able to not only detect this disease but also to differentiate different kinds of viruses, so very important for next treatment, for example saving time to move samples to the other investigation, so very serious solution for poor African countries. The other achievement is new ideas in gene sequencing. He has been chosen by Oxford Nanopore Technologies, outstanding company producing new sequencing machines for testing MinION sequencing machine. So he will be testing this new platform, which will be very important for the future quick diagnosis of other problems. So I have a great pleasure to introduce Tomasz Wołkowicz. Please give your applause to him. Congratulations.
Thanks, Robert. I have a question. Who didn't heard about Ebola? I think that after last year, because of the outbreak in Africa, everyone in the audience heard about this horrible virus. In fact, I work in the only lab in Poland that is able to perform Ebola diagnosis. And we had a problem because due to recommendations, WHO recommendations, ECDC, every positive result have to be confirmed. Why? Because it is possible to have such false positive results, but every positive result have huge implications in society. Panic, the quarantine, and highly costs. And that's why it is really important to confirm such positive result. And of course, there are many tests available. We can sequence the probe. We can use some other molecular tests, but all of them are quite expensive and need really sophisticated equipment and stuff. That's why I had an idea. Why? It's possible to check the sequence not by sequencing but with specific enzymes called restriction enzymes. These enzymes can recognize the specific sequence in the DNA and cut it in the specific place, and as you can see, it is very easy to find out whether we have false positive result and it is not the Ebola, or we have true positive result. And in fact, this is the Zaire Ebola virus. And with this test, the confirmation is very easy and cheap and fast. It can be done in nearly 45 minutes, and in fact in every lab in the world, even in a field lab in Africa. Thank you for your attention.
Hello, everybody. My name is Tomasz Mazurek, and I represent Funding Box, one of the partners and sponsors of the MIT event. We are proud to be here because we are supporting entrepreneurs to make their dreams come true every single day, and we love to do this. So now let me introduce the next guy, Przemek. He's dealing with drones. Drones are now everywhere, but drones designed by Przemek are special. Przemek has worked as the mechanical engineer in the laboratory of intelligent systems at École Polytechnique Fédérale de Lausanne, excuse me my French, one of the best universities in the world, where he was responsible for the mechanical design and manufacturing of several ground and flying robots. Most of the robots flying in the cluttered environments are very often ended up with damage on the floor because they cannot afford to collide with the obstacles. This young innovator, together with his colleague, Ariane Briot, contributed to the development of the gimbal, a hovering robot with the spherical cage that protects it from collisions with obstacles and is also safe for the human interaction. The gimbal is the first collision-tolerant flying robot capable of remaining stable after collisions. This enables its deployment for demanding scenarios, such as inspections, surveillance, and search and rescue in locations too dangerous or even inaccessible to humans. After the success of the gimbal, Przemek has decided to continue with his PhD, and he started a project on foldable cargo drones. This new project has a huge potential and might provide disruptive solutions in the transportation of drugs, rescue equipment, and other goods in inaccessible areas. Please give a warm welcome to Przemek Kornatowski.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to introduce you today 3 crazy places where we currently send people to investigate very crazy moments and very crazy situations. I mean, we are sending people to the power lines, under bridges or collapsed buildings. These inspections are very costly, time-consuming, and they are very dangerous for human workers that they have to climb with ropes, scaffoldings, and cranes. Would you like to go to these places? Of course not. That is why we would like to send robots in all these dangerous places in order to save lives or reduce costs. Drones right now improving their potential in the industry and search and rescue missions. They can be equipped with cameras, they can be equipped with different sensors, and they can access different places. Here you can see that they are not really reliable when they are flying next to obstacles because they are very sensitive to collisions. And their use is very limited to the to use it in the far away from the obstacles, basically. Thus, we developed a game-changing innovation that allows drones to fly very close to obstacles and very close to humans. The robot called Gimbal. Its rotating protective cage allows it to stabilize and be stable after collisions, basically as you can see here. This is basically the key because a robot can be sent in the places where other robots cannot go. Like you can see right now here, it flies into the crane, which is very extremely challenging place. This project was realized at EPFL in Switzerland during the research on bio-inspired robotics. Now transitioning to the market with the creation of the company called Flyability. If you have any questions or if you have any, if you want to contact with me, feel free to write to robot.gimbal@gmail.com. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. My name is Katarzyna Króla-Gryszyńska. I'm partner and co-owner at Innovatica, the consulting company. We help companies grow through innovations. So at least we pretend that we know a little bit about what innovation is. And I'm very happy to say that I'm going to introduce you the last but not least winner of MIT Innovators Under 35. So let me tell you a little story about this guy. He comes from a little town in the south of Poland, a little town called Mielec. He didn't like this place. His father wanted him to be the engineer and build houses there. But this hero, the hero of our story, didn't want to stay in Mielec. He wanted to run away from there. He wanted to run away from engineering, and he wanted to run away from his father's dreams. So he wanted to go from the south of Poland a little bit north. He went to Krakow. He had a very nice time there, but decided that it's not the final place. So he moved a little bit more north to Warsaw, and he was doing a lot of nice things. He was studying, of course. He was doing some investment banking. He was doing some trading and some other things, but he was not really happy. There was something missing. He really wanted to have an impact that he didn't feel that he has. And he wanted to create value. So he was searching further in the north, of course. So he went to London. And he was a really lucky guy to go to London, because up there in London, he realized that there is a huge problem that really needs to be solved. And this problem is the massive traffic congestion. He started to do his research. And he did a lot of research on technical issues as well as on human behaviors issues. He really tried to understand people's behavior. And he realized that what he has to do is to design a new urban vehicle for individuals. That may resemble you of a bicycle. But what he did was much, much more than a bicycle. He developed a gyver. A gyver is chainless because you don't want to get dirty, right, when riding it. The gyver is electric, so you don't get tired or sweat when you ride it. The gyver is folding, so you can really take it with you during the whole day. And the Jiver has got one more feature. The feature that makes everybody love it. The Apple fans and the white collars. They really love it. How did he manage to do it? So first of all, he designed this chainless mechanism by himself. And he invited a designer, not from Apple, not Johnny Ive. Johnny Ive was too busy at this time. So he invited a great designer from Bentley. And this guy made this bike a really desired object. And our hero did something else. He also worked out a great, really great, innovative business model which is based on sharing economy and collaborative economy. And one more thing that he did, he found a great place, a reliable place to manufacture his bike. Do you know where this place is? Back in Mielec. So he made a very nice journey and a very nice circle. He's back in Mielec. So this guy is bound to do business from Mielec. He's bound to do engineering. He's bound to change the world and change the way we live with his bike for non-bikers. His name is Marcin Piątkowski. Please welcome him on the stage. Marcin.
Well, I'm actually speechless, so sorry about my voice.
I didn't want to do that.
Yeah, well, my job is pretty much done here, so I'll just show you a video. Well, yeah, the issue that we're trying to solve is basically congestion and overpopulation in the big cities around the world. Now, there's a big trend that basically people are moving into the big cities. Right now, over half the population of this world lives in big cities. And will increase. Some scientists say that by 2050, actually 70% of global population will live in mega cities around the world. Now, how do you solve the traffic issues in those cities? Basically, you can make cycling a mainstream means of commuting. How do you do that? First of all, you need to target it at a mainstream customer, not at a cyclist that bicycle manufacturers usually do. And secondly, what you need to do is basically create a product that offers all the benefits of riding a bicycle, of cycling, without all the lifestyle compromises that usually come with it. So it's basically hassle-free and easy to adopt. And making it look beautiful is helpful as well. So that's the company that we run. The product's called Jiver Bike. And instead of me introducing the product to you, I'll just show you a teaser of the product actually in action. So that's pretty much the product. Now, that's not the only innovative thing that we do in this company. Another thing that we introduced very recently is called the Jiver Ambassador Program. So we realized that our customers are not cyclists, and they're never going to go into a bicycle shop. Therefore, we've recruited 200 ambassadors around the world in the biggest cities, and they sell the product for us. Why they do it? Because they love the cities they live in, and they want to make them cycling bicycle friendly. Now, what do they get out of it? We actually put our money where our mouth is, so we're saying that we want to make the world a better place for cyclists. And we actually give 15% of the money we earn in this particular city to our ambassadors. So our ambassadors can use 15% of the bicycle retail price in any way they want, as long as it serves the local cycling community. So for example, we with our headquarters in London, there is no way we can know that, for example, in Rome, when we have 3 ambassadors, there is a road somewhere in Rome with a huge hole in it, and basically cyclists get injured every day they cycle on this road. Now, we cannot know this, but they do. So we're basically saying, take this money and patch the road yourself. If you don't want to do this, you can do a small PR campaign and influence local authorities to do it for you. In other words, we're empowering our ambassadors in order to create a better place for the local communities. And that's pretty much it. Thank you very much.
Well, thanks everyone. We're reaching the end of the evening, and we are going to give the award to the Innovator of the Year and the Social Innovator of the Year. In order to do that, I want to call Kathleen Kennedy again on stage, and also Stéphane Rodez, and you are the Vice President of the Management Board of Bank BGZ, BNP Paribas. BNP has been our partner throughout this whole European tour. It's the 3rd year that we work together, the 1st year that we worked together in Poland. I think you should give us a few words about what you do and why you were engaging in a project like this. I think you can pick up one of these microphones.
Hello, good afternoon everyone. So I'm very impressed by the presentations. This is a completely different world for me. I come from the old-fashioned banking industry, so we never usually see these kind of projects. A few remarks. I didn't prepare any speech because I didn't know what to expect. So a few remarks. I'm impressed everybody speaks English. Everybody has international experience. That's the first remark. The second is everybody presented briefly who they were, what they were doing, but also why they were doing what they were doing. And the why is very important because I, at least myself, perceived that the reason or the motivation for doing something was as important as what they were doing. And the last thing that I liked a lot is that, especially in the last project, that people can change the world without having to go to Silicon Valley. They can do it from Mielec. So this was a very good point. About BNP Paribas Group, what do? We support innovation across the world. We invest in funds which invest equity in startups. We also have business centers which are dedicated to startups. We have that in France, in Belgium, in Turkey, in Silicon Valley also, and we are recently starting that in Poland. And we do a lot of activities with L'Atelier, which is here today with us, which is our think tank and innovation laboratory. So very happy to be with you, and I pass the floor to Kathleen. Thank you.
Well, Kathleen and I, thank you, Stefan. Kathleen and I introduced an innovation this year that is right here. Let me show you just one of them. We're going to be giving these awards. These are 3D printed awards that we give this year for the first time, so you guys are lucky. They're made by the Fab Lab in Barcelona. So now I'm going to be calling all the innovators to come on stage. We're going to give them, each of them, one of these. I'm going to ask you to give them for me because I have no hands left. So as you come on stage, please pick your award. And I'm going to be calling Michael. Please join us on stage. Big applause for him. Kasia, Olga, Ola, Mahier, Thomas, Chevislav, and Marcin. Congratulations, everybody. Okay, now logistics on stage start to get a little complicated because there's too many people. But, Kathleen, I think you have an envelope for the Social Innovator of the Year.
We have a microphone.
We give you a microphone. She's going to read the name, and then whoever it is going to have a few minutes to speak. Social.
Okay, Social Innovator of the Year goes to the gentleman here that is using robotics to help with patients recover faster. So, Mikhail, congratulations.
Thank you so much. I've always wanted to say I'm not prepared for something, and this is it, so thanks. Thank you so much for the great honor of being the social innovator and for this amazing event. It's been amazing, and thank you so much from all of us, I guess. And thank you all for coming. I do think that this is all important, and every innovator here has amazing projects that are great for all of us, great for mankind, and with great pleasure I will thank you once again. Okay.
And now Stefan is going to read out the name of the Innovator of the Year.
So I have this honor and privilege, Innovator of the Year, Olga Malinkiewicz.
I would like to thank the organizers for this nomination once again. I'm really happy. We are working really hard. I'm sure we are all working really hard. And I'm really happy to have this opportunity because I forgot during my presentation to show the most important thing. So the perovskite cell, it exists. And yes. So I hope we will fulfill all the expectations, and we are going to show soon some first prototypes. And so see you, and I hope to see you again. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Well, and to finish the event, I have to say that it's been a real pleasure being here in Poland for the first time. I have one thing to tell you, one thing to ask you, is that you guys become friends and support each other and help us build the next generation of innovators, help us find the next talent. I want to invite whatever judges, influencers are around here, because we're going to group on stage for a last picture. And I want to thank everybody who came over for support. And we wish to grow this community bigger and bigger every year. This is just the start. Thank you very much to everyone. And whoever's around and can help us in the picture, please join us on stage. Thank you very much, and to all the organizers as well.